This week, one of my channel members contacted me and said, Richard, I want to set up a cherry shrimp breeding tank. I want to set up a tank that's going to breed lots and lots of shrimp, but I don't want it to look like a breeding tank. I want it to look like a display tank. It's going to be in the main part of my house where people are going to see it. I want it to look good, but produce lots and lots of shrimp. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly the kind of tank I would set up if I wanted to breed lots and lots of shrimp, but I also wanted it to look good. In fact, I can quickly show you now the tank I set up, and it's this one here. 20-gallon shrimp breeding tank that looks good in anyone's home. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard and I'm the author of the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook. So in this video, I'm going to talk you through how I went about setting up this tank. I'm going to explain each step I carried out and give you the reasons why I did it. I'm also going to share with you one of the most common mistakes shrimp keepers make when it comes to setting up new aquariums. And if you make the same mistake, your shrimp could perish long before they produce their first baby. Let's get started. So as I mentioned in the intro, the tank itself holds around 20 gallons. It measures roughly 22 inches by 15 by 15, which is about 56 centimeters by 35 by 35. Now this is actually a DIY tank that I built myself using glass shelves purchased from IKEA. The Utruster IKEA glass shelves glue together perfectly to form various different size aquariums. Now I believe this was first discovered by Tanner from Serpa Design, and I was going to include a video of me physically building this tank, but truth be told, I haven't got a great deal of space in here for building and filming, and he does a much better job anyway. I'll put a link in the description to Tanner's video if you want to check out how he built it. So once the tank was in situ, the first thing I needed was substrate. Now, as I've said to you in many other videos, when it comes to substrate, your red cherry shrimp and your other members of the Neocaridina shrimp family, they really don't care what substrate you use. You can use sand or gravel, you can use fluvial stratum, you can use crushed coral or lava rock, or like me here, I'm using Seachem Fluorite Black. Now I'm using that because I had it. Essentially that substrate is absolutely full of fish poop, and that is the perfect food for the plants I'm going to put in. Plus, because the substrate has been in use for many, many months, it's absolutely covered in beneficial bacteria. Beneficial bacteria cover just about every surface in our aquariums, more or less equally. Whether it's the filter, the plant leaves, the rocks, the wood, the substrate, whatever it may be. So by taking the live substrate from an existing tank and putting it into this tank, I jumpstart the beneficial bacteria. I jumpstart the cycle, meaning I can get shrimp into the aquarium much, much quicker. In my experience, if you're breaking down a tank and it's got perfectly good substrate in it, then use it somewhere else. It's covered in beneficial bacteria. It's covered in life. It's covered in biofilm. It's going to be absolutely perfect for our shrimp. Now, once I had the substrate in and I more or less smoothed out how I wanted it, the next thing to do was to add some decoration. In this case, I went for a piece of bogwood that I've had for quite a while. It was absolutely covered in Java moss. I removed most of the Java moss from the wood before I put it in this tank, but that you can see looking there are some bits still stuck on, and that Java moss in time will grow back and will take over that piece of wood. But for now, I can enjoy it as a piece of decoration, and the shrimp can enjoy the fact it's going to be absolutely covered in biofilm, and again, the beneficial bacteria and the microscopic crustaceans and life that the cherry shrimp love to feed on. Now, when it comes to adding any decoration to your tank, take your time to get it right. Feel free to move it around and chop and change the position. If you're using several different rocks and pieces of wood, take your time. There is no rush to get your layout right. But once you're happy with how you've got your decoration set out, make sure everything's stable and nothing's going to fall over once you fill the tank with water. And then it's time to move on to the plants. In this tank, I essentially used 3 different plants. First up is Cryptocoryne becketi. I love Cryptocorynes. I love members of the crypt family. And this one has got the attractive red stems with the green leaves. It's generally considered to be an easy plant to grow. It grows to about 10 inches tall, which is 25 centimeters, and it doesn't need a great deal of light. It's what you might call a moderate light plant. There is nothing high-tech or advanced about any of the plants I've used in this tank. They don't require special lights. They don't require CO2 injection. All they need is a reasonable aquarium light and some liquid fertilizer once a week or a couple of times a month, and they'll do absolutely fine. So once I was happy with the position of the crypts, it was time to add the next plant, which is Echindora compacta, which is essentially a small Amazon sword. Regular Amazon swords would grow far too large for this tank, but in my experience, the compactor grows to just about the right size. It will probably reach about 10 to 12 inches, about 25 to 30 centimeters tall, and be absolutely perfect in this tank. I find cherry shrimp love broadleaf plants like the Amazon sword, which is why I try and include them in so many of my tanks. Once the 3 sword plants were in, it was time to add something for the foreground, and in this case I went for Liliopsis brasiliensis, which is a fabulous little foreground plant that, again, like the others, doesn't require special light, doesn't require CO2. All it wants is some fertilizer adding to the tank, and ideally a fertile substrate or some root tabs to really give it a boost. Now, as you may notice in this video, one thing I'd forgotten before I started setting up the tank was I lent my planting tongs to a friend of mine. So I had to use my sausage fingers, which is never ideal, but take your time and you can make it work. Once all the plants are in, it was time to add the water. And on this occasion, I just filled the tank up as slowly as I could so I didn't disturb the substrate. I didn't want all of the poop and detritus that I want in my substrate washing out into the tank. So I turned the tap on, let it fill up slowly. Of course, it's incredibly warm in my fish room, so as I filled the tank up, as you can see, the front glass kept getting covered in condensation, but it's just a case of waiting for the tank temperature to equalize to the room and condensation soon disappears. I added the filter, which in this case is the Haiger hang-on-back canister filter, which I'm absolutely loving. The light I've chosen to use on this aquarium is the Haiger programmable LED. This comes with a built-in timer, so you can set what time of day it comes on and goes off. This Haiger light is a full spectrum light, making it absolutely ideal for growing plants. And the plants I've put in this tank will absolutely flourish under this light. Thank you so much, Haiger, for providing the light for this aquarium. So now the shrimp tank is all set up. It's just a case of leaving it for 2 or 3 weeks to mature so it's ready for the shrimp. And here is where so many new hobbyists particularly go wrong. The mistake they make is adding the shrimp far too soon. Now, many of us know about cycling an aquarium, and cycling an aquarium means allowing it sufficient time for beneficial bacteria to build up both in the filter and in the aquarium itself, so that the waste from the shrimp or the fish can be processed from the highly toxic ammonia through to the much safer nitrate. And that's fabulous for fish. But when it comes to shrimp, there's an additional step they need. Shrimp need biofilm. Biofilm is an absolutely crucial food for your cherry shrimp. And if you add the shrimp too soon, if sufficient biofilm hasn't developed in the aquarium, the chances of your colony successfully living long enough to start reproducing is really, really slim. I know it's exciting. You've set up your new tank, you want to get the shrimp in there. And stores often don't help because they will sell you a setup and they may well sell you shrimp on the same day. You need to allow your new tank to mature for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And if you can have the patience, even longer, so that biofilm begins to develop. So you start to see algae developing in the tank until you start to find that life is developing in the tank, and then you can add your shrimp. So I will now leave this tank for at least 2 or 3 weeks before I add any shrimp. Skipping this step will almost certainly lead to the downfall of your shrimp. The number of people that contact me and say, I've got my new aquarium, I put the shrimp in, I had 10 shrimp, 2 weeks later, I can't see any shrimp. What's happened? And it turns out they haven't allowed the tank to mature. They've just put the shrimp straight in, and even if you're feeding those shrimp, they still need that biofilm. They still need the starts of algae. They still need the microscopic crustaceans that they eat. So no matter what you do, when you set up your aquarium, take your time and allow that shrimp tank to mature before you add your shrimp. And these are exactly the kind of points I cover in my book, the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook. I wrote this book specifically to help hobbyists get through from choosing which shrimp they want to how to set up the tank, to what to feed them, and how to breed them. It's essentially a guide to successfully keeping, feeding, and breeding cherry shrimp. I also have a new series called the Shrimp Keeping Basics, where I cover every aspect of the hobby, and I'll link to that playlist just here. Thanks for watching.